pockets the money, and I never know what exactly has happened to the book. But for some reason, she decided to show me what has happened. And I was totally taken aback that the book has sold 60,000 copies.
So, tell us a little bit about the book, because when I was speaking about the moment of humiliation, it was at the Sunday Times Literary Awards about, 3 years ago. And I went up to Coletti and I said, you know, I think it's too academic, and I don't think you're going to sell very well. And maybe there should be fewer tables. I didn't say it in such a way, but I more or less said that. And I said, there are more tables. I can't read tables. You could read tables. And whatever. Anyway, 60,000 copies later, look who's laughing. So I mean, it's fantastic. Congratulations.
Well, it shows that you should learn to read tables. Because most South Africans can read tables.
Yes, well, I'm obviously the exception, so there we go. Now listen, I admit humiliation, so there we are. What do you think it was that sold those 60,000 copies, other than people exchanging money?
Okay, the publisher here, I can't see Andrea Matras. Oh, there she is. So you have to ask her, because she's more of an expert than me on issues.
No, but what was the in your opinion? I mean, what was it? Because it was a very timely book.
In my view, what sold the book is 9 pages of the book. But
and what were those 9 pages?
Those 9 pages were devoted to a ferocious attack on black economic empowerment.
And that's what everybody wanted to read.
In my view, I think that's what. Now, I don't know what the publisher thinks. She may have a different analysis. But in my view, I think what sold the book was I'm the only black person who has attacked black economic empowerment. And Songezo, we were on the platform today.
I heard.
And he said hood and hard, and there was even about black economic empowerment, and there was a young black lady who said that, you horrible Mweleti, what would you replace black economic empowerment with? I didn't have time to explain to her. I would replace it with nothing. Hard work, that's all I would replace black economic empowerment with. So in my view, and I think that's what sold the book. It's only 9 pages of a 200-page book. Was when I explained what the implications of black economic empowerment are for the economy of South Africa, for the black people in South Africa, and for the future of the country. And I still believe what I wrote then, and I still believe is correct. You know, the point, well, I have one advantage over most South Africans, which is that I lived in the United Kingdom for many years. And the English and they have 1,001 faults. But I hear there are some of them yet. But what I learned from the British is they have very, very, very cutting analysis of their own society. They have a no band of getting to understand. I mean, you have people like E.P. Thompson, Irish Tony. Those people would take apart the religions of England, the Methodists. What was the role of Methodism in their society? So that's what I learned from them. So I then thought, okay, having learned all this from them, now how do I apply it to my own society, which is South Africa? And, you know, Dr. Mutlana, famous doctor, once sent a message to me that if he ever met me in a dark alley because of my anti-black economic empowerment, he said he would dawn on me now for the English. They don't know what that means. Now, I sent a message back to Dr. Mutlana, and I said, unlike you, Dr. Mutlana, I don't live in dark alleys. I don't know what Dr. Mutlana did in dark alleys, but so the point I was making was that preferential treatment do nothing for me. You know, I grew up as a Xhosa speaker in the Eastern Cape, but I could compete with the English for a job on the BBC World Service, and I won. And I was employed by the BBC World Service. From being a Xhosa speaker to being a top English speaker. Why? Because I made the effort. That's all, really. There was nothing to it. I had to read Charles Dickens, I had to read The Economist, I had to read The Guardian, in order to be able to compete against the English in their own language, so that I could beat them as a journalist in the BBC World Service. And so my argument with the South Africans, or the black South Africans, is, guys, forget this preferential treatment that we are looking for. Now, let's look for excellence and capability.
So, if there's 9 pages, in your opinion, so the book, and there certainly was a lot of controversy, and there probably still would be, your next book, which I know is going to come out next year, and you're writing it with your niece.
Yes.
Now, what can we look forward to with that? What is the main thrust?
Well, the main thrust of the book is, why is the South African economy not growing? Now, you have 1,001 economists. I don't know if you have some of them, you know, Azar and the others. Actually, what we are arguing is that it's the sociology of South Africa. It's not whatever the economists are telling you. The sociology of South Africa works against change. We have a gridlock in our, which is the title of the book. The social players in our society in South Africa, the big industrialists, the big politicians, big labor, the poor, all of them have a lot of power. South Africa is one of the fascinating countries where the people with nothing have the most power. You know, it's a very bizarre situation. Norman, even Karl Marx, if he came to South Africa, he would go back into his grave because he would think, now this is like really a disaster. Why? Because according to Karl Marx, the people who drive society are the people with the power. They control means of production and what have you. When you look at South Africa, who has the most power in this country? The ANC has nothing. It has no means of production. It owns nothing. But, well, let's not go there. But it owns it has no muscle, it has no ownership. And who puts it there? The poor, who vote, 70% of people who vote the ANC into power are the poor South Africans. Not the workers, by the way. It's the poor who are not working. So we have a unique society in this country where the people who own nothing control the country. So that what we are trying to say is, when you have these kinds of structures like we have, they all checkmate each other. And this checkmating that we have, the rich, the poor, the political elite, economic elite, the bankers, whatever, they all cancel each other's power. The consequence is we are at a standstill. We're not moving. Now, how do you break that gridlock that we're sitting with?
So you come, I mean, I'm fascinated by the book. It speaks to me of the importance of ethics. It speaks to me of the importance of education. You talk about that again and again and again, because you agree completely with Mletsi that we have gridlock, that we're in a difficult situation in South Africa, and it's an untenable situation in South Africa. But some of the things that you are suggesting, I think, are so difficult to achieve. Intellectually, they're absolutely fantastic, but they're so difficult to achieve. How do you get round that? Because it's like the dream of a Catholic priest, if you know what I mean. So how do you get round the ethics, asking people to stop doing this, to do that, and to behave at the same time? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm putting it very badly, I know, but it's complex, your argument. But I agree with virtually everything that you say, and I also want a more moral society, but I don't know that the gentle way that you're suggesting it is going to get too many people to follow your suggestions, which may, in the end, make a much better South Africa to live in.
That's it. Maybe if I run for president, I will. Joking. There's an example I use in the book, Jenny, of a colleague who's a real person, and she's a replication. She's replicated 1 million times. And I talk about, she lives on Orange Farm. I worked at the Melrose Arch. She lives at Orange Farm, which is quite far out of Joburg, more towards Vereeniging. She wakes up at 3:30 to be at work at 6:30 at Melrose Arch. So by the time we get there, those of us with cars and who don't live too far after dropping off our kids at work, she's already there because she's got to clean the office. And she's got to leave and try to get home at around 3:30, certainly before 4 o'clock, otherwise she won't make it back home. She never gets to look after her children. And the part of the story I didn't mention in the book is that her eldest son, who was 23, 24, died of AIDS. And on the day that he died, she asked for permission to leave work early, and she wasn't allowed to. So she never got to see him before he died. Now, at around the time I was writing the book, there was another story in the Sowetan, a sister publication of ours, where they showed kids drinking beer and basically carousing on the streets at around 10:30, 11. And it's quite easy to talk about how useless their parents are and how negligent their parents are. But my colleague worked incredibly hard. She was very diligent, hardly ever complained, and she did a heck of a lot. And basically she lived for the company, and she could never do anything for her family. Now, if you work all of this backwards and look at all the problems that arise, that we treat, I think, dismissively, and we try and respond to bureaucratically, I realize that we always headed for conflict. So she could possibly belong to a union, and she would want certain things, and we'd say labor is difficult. She could ask to start work at 8 o'clock and not at 6:30 as she was supposed to, and so on. So the question, Jenny, is how do we reconstruct this thing in such a way that everybody feels, or that most of us feel, that there's an attempt to make a just society out of it? Because people do work hard. It's not because they don't work hard. It's certainly a lot of people who've got the opportunity to do so. And in there are spatial development issues. She lives on Orange Farm because that's how the structure of her society was supposed to be, right? There are labor issues involved therein there are ethical considerations around whether, for instance, which was a huge dispute that I had with some of my colleagues around allowing the Muslim women colleagues who were assistants to be allowed to go home early during Ramadan. Because we get Sunday off as Christians, but they don't. We force them to take Sunday off, but they can't take Friday off. As an example, these things are difficult. In a bigger sense, Jenny, it's about recognizing the humanity in all of us, but also being practical about what is possible and not sell people a utopia and have the values that Moritz is talking about. The hard work certainly is part of it. But I do not believe Bonina's son stood a chance in life. Didn't. He had to make it against the odds, and they defeated him because his parents just were never there for him. And I ask myself if this is the kind of society that I want to normalize, and I don't want to normalize that kind of society. This book tortured me. I wrote it because I wrote it from the heart and I wanted to say it. And I'm very grateful to Penn Macmillan because I did a presentation to Andrea and they asked me to write 2 chapters, which I did, and they loved the book. But I'd saved up a lot of money to publish it myself if nobody would. So, is this possible? I think what's missing is credible leadership. What's missing is a politics that is depoliticized in a way that lacks a bureaucratic language that paints the picture that all of us should try within the means that we have to construct. And too much resides in the area of policy and different policy actions and laws and things that we're going to put in place, like BE and so on, which you put a law in place, you force people to do it, and that's how they're going to do it. Societies don't work like that. And the final point, Jenny, is that we are an incredibly broken society. We had a story in the Sunday Times where 3 young men were stabbing a man to death, and it brought it to our homes. And we can throw them in jail. We can ask, how did they get to that point in their lives? So what kind of conversation do we choose? It's not impossible. It can be done. I just think we don't have the political EQ and vision to realize it. It's possible.
I would love to spend an hour talking to you and recording it, because I think there isn't a single person in this room who doesn't want to live in a more ethical society and in a more equal society. It's how we do it. And you do need to have leadership that occasionally is inspired. We were talking earlier on about Mandela, and in a noisy room, so it was difficult. But people with vision and with integrity, because it's impossible to respect people with no integrity and no vision, and that is part of the problem. But can I just say about Songezo's book, because we can't spend hours doing this and talking. I'm reading it very slowly because I can't read it fast. So it's not a thriller, whatever. It's a deeply thoughtful, it's a very personal book, and I think that many of you will get a great deal out of it and be able to start maybe looking at things in a slightly different way. It certainly made me look at things in a slightly different way, and I think it probably deserves to be reread. So please consider having a look and reading that book and coming to your own conclusions. But thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Songezo Zibi. Mbeki, thank you very much indeed.